The feast hall beneath the gleaming banners of House Fry smelled of wet wool and roast ox. Drift smoke clung to the rafters, coiling like restless spirits too long denied the winds outside. Catelyn Stark felt it gather in her hair, tangling with the scent of river mist and dread. Long tables groaned beneath trenchers of bread, trenched once more by greasy carving knives. But the laughter that ought to have filled the hall lay flat and uncertain, as though every throat waited for another's cue. Somewhere beyond the inner doors, gray wind's low growl rose, a distant thunder caught in stone. Robb's smile remained steady, but the fingertips of his wine hand tapped the rim of his goblet in a rhythm Catelyn remembered from his boyhood. The counting beat he'd used whenever he faced a lesson he disliked, measuring heartbeats to keep anger at heel. Walder Frye lifted his cup as if its silver weight defied him. Torchlight limned the furrows of his age, deep as plowed fields left fallow. "My honored guests," he wheezed, voice carried more by vanity than breath. "May the crossing of our houses be as strong as the stones of my bridge." At his elbow, lame Lothar poured pale red wine that sloshed like watered blood. Robb inclined his head, words of thanks rehearsed. And yet, in that blink between the Earl and the Swallow, Catelyn saw his gray eyes narrow, saw the battlefield commander measure distance to the dais and exits both. A harpist plucked the first notes of A Maiden Fair in the Tower, and several Fry girls sighed in practiced unison. Edmure's cheeks pinked. His new bride, Roslyn, watched him with wide doe eyes, though Catelyn sensed no deceit there. It was the men, not the women, who shaped treachery in this hall. Lady Stark's gaze swept the galleries. Crossbowmen lounged too near the shadows, fingers brushing triggers, pretense of idleness as brittle as late autumn ice. She counted 9 on the south walk, 6 on the north. Behind her, Great John Umber's booming laugh covered the scrape of his seat, turning outward so his sword arm faced more room. Ser Reynold Westerling, poor, unwelcome Westerling, fingered the hilt of a dagger meant only for carving meat. The song went on. The candles guttered. Catelyn's skin crawled. She recalled Bran's tale of the comet, how it blazed red over the north like a wound that would not clot, and wondered if this feast were its answering scar. Yet prophecy or no, a mother's duty was plain. She set her goblet aside and rose, slow enough to seem no more than stiff. "My Lord of Fry," she began, voice a silver thread drawn through broken glass. "I wonder, might I trouble you for air? These halls grow warm, and the ladies would welcome a turn beneath the moon." Walder's mouth twitched, annoyance or calculation. "The lady tires of my table so soon?" "A moment only," Catelyn said. "The night is fair for the river's song. Thunder from beyond the doors, no, not thunder. Gray wind, snarling now, paws pounding against ironwood." Robb's head snapped toward the sound, and half the phrase flinched before they could chide themselves into stillness. The hall held its breath. Walder's watery eyes narrowed to slits, and in that narrowing, Catelyn felt the trap steel about to spring. It was Blackfish Brinden who broke the spell. He rose languidly, fish brooch gleaming against midnight armor. "If my niece desires a breath of night," he drawled, "I shall escort her. No man begrudges river air to a Tully." "Be quick," Walder rasped. "The bedding waits, and I've sons enough eager for merriment." A scatter of laughter, forced, brittle. Yet in that moment of shifting attention, the Blackfish's hand brushed Catelyn's sleeve. "Move," he whispered, barely sound. They walked together toward the great doors. Every pace sang with peril. Catelyn certain bolts would spit from the galleries at any blink. Behind, she heard the Grachan's voice rise. No words, simply exuberance, a roar that dragged eyes his way. Then Robb spoke, calm and clear. "Uncle," he called, "I'll join you. Talisa as well. My lady could use cool air." Talisa's dark eyes flicked up from her trencher, question silent. Robb nodded once, the small twist of his mouth promising explanation later. When they reached the doors, the Blackfish shouldered the ironwood bar aside. The echo slammed the hall into hush. Outside, the twins' courtyard breathed fog off the trident. Gray wind paced, hackles high. As soon as Robb stepped through, The dire wolf pressed against his knees, whining warning. "Easy, boy," the king in the north murmured, but his sword was already naked in his hand, moonlight sliding along the steel. Within the hall, pipes squealed a new tune, the Rains of Castamere, and none could mistake that blade-thin mockery. The doors began to close. Blackfish Brinden shoved Catelyn and Talisa forward. "Run," he snapped. Crossbow bolts thunked into the ironwood where a heartbeat before Catelyn's skull had been. Grey wind bounded back through the narrowing gap, jaws wet crimson. Behind him, shouting, Stark men overturning benches, Frey men cursing, the shriek of women rising beneath the vaulted roof. They ran. Fog swallowed their breath, their footsteps, their terror. Stable lanterns glimmered like stranded stars. Robb vaulted a wine cask, seized a slack-jawed squire's torch, and hurled it into the hayrack. Flames leapt, a wall of light between them and pursuit. "To the kennels," Catelyn gasped, though she scarcely knew why. But Brinden understood. The kennel gate opened onto an older postern in the outer wall, long disused. Stone corridors twisted beyond, damp with centuries. Steel rang behind them, Umber's war cry, wild and joyous. "Robb!" the great Jon bellowed. "King in the bloody north!" The sound bought precious moments. Stark men rallied about their lord like ravens to a banner, dragging the wounded, armored only in desperation. Yet numbers still favored the phrase, and the Boltons within their borrowed cloaks. Through the kennel's gloom they fled, past hounds barking madness. Talisa stumbled. Catelyn caught her arm, felt the child quickening inside that slender frame. "Hold," she whispered, pressing palm to belly. Talisa's breath hitched, but she nodded, resolve stealing softer flesh. Brinden hacked the rust from an oak door with 3 blows of his axe. Cold night whistled through. Beyond the postern, the embankment dropped steep to the river shallows. Fog curled over black water, hiding the near bank but not the farther lights of Seaguard, dim flickers on the horizon. Boats lay tethered where ferrymen usually slept. They splashed into chill that soaked boots and greaves alike. Catelyn bit down on a cry. Frostmelt numbness ate at her bones. Grey wind swam easily, shepherding them toward a skiff half buried in reeds. Edmure's sworn swords hauled the craft free. The first arrows hissed as they shoved off. Torchfire danced along the battlements, orange halos in the mist. Crossbows twanged, bolts stitching the river. One struck the gunwale at Catelyn's knee. Another grazed Robb's pauldron, sparking on steel. He did not flinch. "Row," he commanded, voice iron. Oars bit the dark water, and the current drew them out of easy range. Behind them, the twins blazed, not from torchlight alone. Somewhere in that vast warren, casks of lamp oil erupted, either stark vengeance or Frey accident. None could say. Smoke mingled with river fog, and above it rose the Grachan's laugh again, enormous and defiant, until abruptly it ceased. Catelyn closed her eyes, tasting ash and grief. She would mourn later. For hours they drifted southeast, hugging reed-choked banks where even a lantern seemed a betrayal. Dawn bruised the east when they grounded on muddy flats beside a willow wood. Exhaustion claimed most, but Robb stood watch beside the direwolf, eyes fixed on the river's bend as if he would carve oaths into its flow. Talisa slept against Catelyn's shoulder, and the child, Robb's heir, kicked gently beneath the healer's palm. Brinden offered a cloak. Lady Stark drew it about them both. When the sun climbed, they took stock. Of the 500 who rode with Robb to the twins, 200 breathed. The others lay within burning halls or floated face down in the Trident. Among the living, small Jon Umber wept for his father, but his grief forged a new resolve. He pledged the last hearth's axes thrice over, once for vengeance, once for honor, once for the old gods who watched wolves in the wood. Robb's map spread across a tree stump. He traced lines with a dirt-blackened nail. "Moat Cailin stands between us and the north," he murmured. "Bolton men hold it, and Freys will march to join them. We are few." "Few," Catelyn agreed, "but seen as dead, that grants us shadows to hide within." Shadows don't win wars. They can choose battlefields. Bryndon's voice, low and gravelly. He pointed west. Seagard's lord is Mallister, true to Tully and Stark both. He'll grant ships. Sail round the neck instead of cutting through it. Let the krakens dread the dire wolf at sea. Robb measured silence, the weight of every life upon him. Then he nodded. We sail. But first we send ravens, none to Winterfell. To open. White Harbor, Deepwood, Bear Island. Call our banners still. Tell them the king lives. And the queen, Talisa whispered, one hand to her womb. A hush spread among the ragged survivors. Hope traveled on softer feet than despair, yet its tread thundered in the clearing. Catelyn rose, clearing her throat. Let songs be spun some other day. Today we move. Men who had wept hours passed sharpened swords on whetstones of purpose. Gray wind loped the camp's edge, tail high, and when they marched, sun at their backs, it seemed to Catelyn that the direwolf's shadow lengthened beyond nature, as though the old gods themselves walked with them, unseen but nearer than breath. Word of the burning twins raced ahead, borne by merchant barges and frightened washerwomen. At first, tales claimed every Stark slain. Then rumors said ghostly wolves had closed jaws over Walder's throat. By the time ravens reached King's Landing, Tywin Lannister suspected neither lie told the whole. He read the ciphered letter twice, face a marble mask, then dismissed Pycelle with a flick of crimson velvet. Alone, he allowed himself a long breath. So the boy lives, he murmured. And worse, he learns caution. The hand's fingers tapped his desk, precisely as Robb's had upon his goblet. And across a continent, two kings measured each heartbeat against the turning of the world. In the north, Roose Bolton sat in the Lord's chair at the Dreadfort, pale eyes reflecting torch flame. News came by raven there too, but this bird bore no seal, only blood upon its feathers. Roose plucked the scroll free. His mouth drew tight. Send for my bastard, he told his maester. There is still time to skin victory from failure. The bastard rode from Winterfell at dusk, flayed-man banners snapping in sour wind. Bran Stark watched him go from the broken watchtower, Hodder's comforting bulk at his back. The direwolf's ghost and Summer paced restlessly, as if some distant sibling called. Bran's dreams had been full of blood and river mist, yet amid horror he had heard his mother's voice, faint but alive. He told no one. Some things belonged first to hope, not speech, but when the rider vanished south, Bran whispered after him. Ride hard, bastard. You chase ghosts now, and ghosts bite. Across the narrow sea, in Astapor's Red City, Daenerys Targaryen studied freedmen drilling beneath a rising dragon banner. She listened to Ser Barristan recount fresh Westerosi upheaval, eyes like quicksilver catching each detail. A king who should be dead lives still, he finished. Dragons, once thought lost, live still, Dany answered. Perhaps the world begins again. Far north of all, among frost-bitten stones of Castle Black, Jon Snow stood sentinel on the wall's edge. The wind carried scents of pine pitch and distant smoke. He thought of Robb often, brother in all but name, dead by every report. Yet that morning, an old rook had landed on his wrist, cawed twice, and flown back south. Nothing in that but bird nonsense, unless the gods kept sly humors. Jon turned his face to the south and whispered a vow the wind stole from his lips. Days turned to weeks. The Stark party, swollen by Mallister levies, took ships creaking beneath autumn winds. Salt spray cured sorrow into something sterner. Catelyn watched her son on the forecastle each dawn, stone still except for hair whipped across his brow. Nightmares walked his sleep. He woke calling Grey Wind, though the wolf ranged below among hounds and deckhands. Yet each morning, Robb's eyes cleared, and he learned to listen more than speak. On the Riverland's banks, vengeance bloomed like corpse lilies. The Brotherhood without banners struck Fry patrols, hanging their corpses by pale entrails so crows could read the charges. Thuras of Myr sent ravens bearing a single message. For every wolf slain under false guest right, one Fry shall feed the land. Rumor said the Lord of Lightning kissed each rope with prayer, and the corpses burned with gray-blue flame. Tywin answered with gold bounties and dark letters to Roose Bolton. Yet gold buys only men alive to spend it, and the crossings saw fewer such each fortnight. The old lion's claws dulled on distance, and every message north seemed to return slower. When Stark sails rounded the fingers, they found the narrow sea storm-churned. Lightning painted sky and water alike. Lord Rodrik Harlaw, newly sworn for the nonce, guided them through shoals where ironborn longships dared not hunt in such gales. At midnight, amid thunder that drowned men's prayers, Robb stood upon deck as a mast snapped, yet his voice cut the uproar. Lower sail to half, lash the yard, and the sailors obeyed because kings who bleed with their men do not need crowns to prove command. Dawn revealed the Isle of Skagos to starboard, its broken peaks clawing ragged cloud. They skirted wide. Robb's council weighed landing at White Harbor, but rumors spoke of Manderley banners pinned upon walls flayed and red. So they drove west instead, seeking the narrow inlet of Deepwood Motte. There, Lady Sibel Glover opened gates still scarred by iron-born axes. She knelt in mud before Robb, tears carving lines through grime as she gave him the sword of her slain lord husband. "The North remembers, your grace." Those words rang against timber and heart alike. Snow fell thick the night they entered Deepwood's hall. As the great doors shut, muffling the wind, Robb faced the men who had followed him through fire and sea. Many wore bandages brown stiff. Catelyn's hands ached from stitching wounds, yet she kept needle ready. War seldom waited for healers. The king's voice was hoarse but steady. "We are fewer than when we left Riverrun, but the wolves of winter hunt lean. We will fight." They cheered, quiet, ragged, earnest. Hope, once frail, now bared fangs of its own. Beyond the neck, Moat Caelin's towers loomed black against a bruised sky. Ramsay Snow surveyed the causeway through rain that stank of peat. Dead men's heads spiked the battlements. Flayed faces peeled open like obscene flowers. Yet the marsh whispered secrets. Every raven broader than usual, every frog's croak carried warning. Ramsay cared little. He wanted only his father's favor, and the promise of heirship that would grant. The bastard ordered scouts deeper into bogs none returned from. 3 nights later, shapes emerged from mist. Tall as giants, draped in shaggy hide, their axes whispering through air. Bog lights glimmered green about their feet. Ramsay's southern men quailed. Ironborn reavers cursed charms they had never believed. The giants, no giants at all, only Crannog sentinels on waiting stilts, struck first at supply wagons, then at the edges of ramparts. By dawn, the bastards' ranks were half gone, swallowed by fetid water and silent arrows. The North remembers, when Robb's host, now swelled by Deepwood spears and Barrowton bowmen, arrived at the causeway. They found gates ajar, torch racks sputtering and unattended.
No banners flew.
Ramsay's head hung from the same spike that once bore a northern scout, flayed cheeks fluttering like banners in grim mimicry. Robb rode beneath that grisly arch without pausing. Gray wind lifted his muzzle but made no sound. The king in the north dismounted atop the central tower, gazed south over leagues of mist. "Raise the direwolf," he commanded. Stark men obeyed, and sable on ice roses where the flayed man had shriveled. Catelyn watched rain wash red from stone. In its place, winter's breath settled, cold and clean. Letters flew to White Harbor, where Lord Wyman revealed his secret scorn for the Boltons by opening granaries in memory of brave Ned. To Skagos, where mountain clans vowed to guard eastern sea lanes. To the Wall, where Lord Commander Jeor Mormont lay dead but the Night's Watch still owed old vows to no crown yet cherished new hope. Jon Snow read that ravens scratch by torch glow within otherwise silent chambers. All night he sat, the paper creased beneath his thumbnail, until dawn dissolved the wall's blue into pale gold. Then he dressed and sought Maester Aemon. "The realm has more kings than thrones," Jon said, "but only one brother by blood who yet breathes. A brother of heart, not name," Aemon corrected softly. "But the heart remembers when duty must be weighed. blind eyes turned unerringly toward Jon's. "What will your duty say, Lord Snow?" "I do not know." Yet as Jon spoke the words, Ghost lifted his head, red eyes reflecting dawn's first fire. Somewhere far south of sky and wall, gray wind answered with high, wild song. At King's Landing, the royal sept rang with bells for Joffrey's wedding. Though cracks spider-webbed their bronze throats signs, the small folk whispered that gods themselves frowned. In the Red Keep, Tyrion Lannister listened to whispers of rebels risen again, of Frey's dying screaming of Bolton failure. He sipped wine soured by fear. "My father misjudged the North," he told Varys. "He thought the land would kneel once the wolf was skinned. But wolves run stronger when blood scents snow. The hand is not prone to misjudgment," Varys replied, voice silk. "Rather, history misjudges the timing of his plans. Yet even spiders cannot untangle threads cut by ghosts." Tyrion snorted. "Ghosts don't swing swords. So we all once believed. News cut deeper than swords. Walder Frey found strangled in his own bed, by hands unknown. The twins in chaos as Frey sons warred for succession, each murder birthing another. In Lannisport, sailors refused cargo for the Trident, claiming waters haunted by river demons. The lion's roar across Westeros grew an octave lower. Tywin dispatched Ser Gregor Clegane north with 500 mounted killers, but storms shattered roads and bridges, and rumors said the mountain's men turned on one another when provisions failed, some gnawing horseflesh raw. For once, cruelty devoured itself before any enemy need raise blade. Winter crept upon Westeros like a patient wolf. Snow cloaked the King's Road. Travelers vanished, their bones later found picked clean by silent scavengers. Yet within the north, hearth fires glowed brighter. Lords once cowed under Bolton threat now rode to Moat Cailin bearing oaths sealed with weirwood sap. Lady Meage Mormont arrived astride a bear almost as large as her stubborn pride. She kissed Robb's cheeks, declared him cub no more, and placed a wrought iron crown of bear claws before him. He declined the gift, yet his men cheered as though he had accepted all the island's might. Catelyn watched her son transform, the boy who once suff. T-Glory now weighed each life like a maester weighs coin. None spent lightly. He spoke less, listened more. When news reached them of Sansa's marriage to Tyrion, Robb said only, "We rescue who we can." Grief he buried beneath frost, but let no spark of vengeance there freeze his heart. Talisa birthed a son beneath the roof of Barrow Hall, a moon-pale babe whose first cry seemed wolf-bright. They named him Eddard, and when Robb held the child aloft, the hall thundered with the pledge of men who would die before letting harm near that fragile bundle. Catelyn's tears wet her sleeves. Hope grew heavier than sorrow once did. Spring violence stirred beyond the wall. Mance Raider's wildling host pressed south, giants beating drums carved from mammoth hide. The Night's Watch, too few, fought atop black ice. Jon Snow's letters grew bleak until one came sealed not in wax but blood. Without aid, the realm falls from the top down. Robb read it thrice, knuckles white. Advisors bickered. The North must heal first, some argued. Let the South burn. Others said a true king defends all Westeros, or none will acknowledge his claim. Robb's gaze lingered on his sleeping son, then on the dire wolves pacing restless. Decision hardened like new ice. We march north. Supply wagons creaked, banners unfurled. Direwolf, bear, trout, green hand. They crossed winter rivers crusted with ice, forging roads as they went. At Queen's Crown, they met wildling scouts and broke them with arrow and spear, but Robb sent survivors back with message. Turn back, or stand beside me against the darkness beyond. Some laughed, some listened. At the wall, bleak wind howled welcome. Jon Snow descended by cage to greet the army. The brothers in black stared at banners of houses they had once sworn not to name, torn between old vows and grateful hunger for allies. Maester Aemon's blind smile trembled when Robb knelt before him, offering grain and men in exchange for nothing save unity. The wall protects us all, Robb said. So now the North protects the wall. In the haunted forest, nights burned with watchfires. Wildling horns answered and were answered in songs of steel. On the first full moon, Mance Rayder himself rode beneath Parley Banner, flanked by a giant and spearwives fierce as any knight. Robb Stark met him astride a dun stallion, gray wind prowling close. They spoke long in the biting air. What passed exactly none but they could say. But when dawn spilled gray over snow, the king beyond the wall rode back to his folk and scattered the host like crows before storm. Some thought magic, others the promise of lands to settle south when peace allowed. Regardless, the siege of the wall died upon its own silence. Jon Snow clasped Robb's forearm. "You ended a war without blood." Robb smiled, grim. "There is always blood, but sometimes it need not be shed twice." They stood together atop the wall at sunrise, dire wolves beside them, and watched the horizon burn pink as thawing frost. Far south, Tywin Lannister's heart faltered as ravens bore worse and worse tidings. He died in his sleep, some said. Others whispered Tyrion slipped a blade between ribs. The truth mattered less than result. The Lion's Den now held princelings with teeth too small for power. Cersei seized the regency, but gold shrank, debts swelled, and the Iron Bank turned its gaze west. With fires beneath their feet and debts at their throats, the Crown's armies began to desert. Many rode north, seeking the king whose mercy had spared wildlings and Freys alike. Mercy, they heard, not weakness. Others sailed east, chasing dragons sung of in taverns. Westeros itself seemed to draw breath before winter's hell. And through it all, songs spread. Of a wedding meant for slaughter turned to smoke. Of a king who walked through fire and river both. Of a mother who faced crossbows barehanded. Of a baby born beneath northern stars who laughed at frost. Minstrels called it the Song of the Failing Red, though Catelyn Stark preferred no name at all. Stories belonged to bards, not to those who survived the hours between verses. In Deepwood's Gods would one hush-laden evening, Catelyn knelt beneath a heart tree older than the realm. Snowflakes melted on her cheeks. Her prayers were wordless, shaped only by gratitude and plea. Footsteps whispered down the needle-strewn path. Robb stood beside her, sword unbelted in respect. "Mother," he said, "I dreamed last night of Father's voice. He said winter comes, but spring follows if we remember." Catelyn laid her hand over his. "Do you remember?" "Yes." His eyes shone with the old hurt of loss, tempered now by new purpose. "I remember that wolves hunt in packs. Alone, they starve. Together, they bring down giants." He turned his gaze skyward, where snow sifted like silent promise. "We will heal this land, Mother. Even if winter takes us first, we will set the pack's path." She squeezed his fingers, feeling the thrum of life strong and sure. Somewhere beyond, Talisa's laughter drifted with their son's answering squeal. Gray wind lifted his muzzle, catching scent of hearth smoke and family. And for the first time since towers rose over a treacherous feast, Catelyn Stark let herself breathe the cold, clean air without fear of knives singing in shadows. The Red Wedding had failed, yet its echo would sing for generations. But the song was changed, woven now with threads of river mist and wolf's howl, of mother's courage and brother's vows, of hard roads and harder mercy. The pack had escaped the trap, and the footsteps of winter would find them side by side, teeth gleaming beneath the ancient, watchful stars. The first true blizzard came at twilight, veiling Deepwood's palisade in swirling white that howled through every arrow slit. Robb Stark stood on the watchwalk, snow crusting his hair to silver, and studied the curtain of flurries as if it were a battlefield map. Torches guttered along the ramparts, wicks snapping in the wind. Below, the cramped yard clanged with last-minute hammer strokes. Smiths riveting fresh iron to makeshift arbalests, wheelwrights banding wagons for the march to Castle Black. The smell of pitch simmered in cauldrons, pungent as fear. Catelyn moved beside her son, cloak flaring. "The maester says the storm will last through dawn," she told him, voice low so nearby sentries would hear steadiness rather than worry. "Travel before then is folly." Robb's breath smoked between clenched teeth. "The wall cannot wait on clearer skies," he said. but after a moment he nodded. "We ride at first light, whatever light there is." Below them, small John Umber strode the courtyard, bawling orders that wrestled with the gale. His beard was a frozen thicket, but his laughter rose unfettered whenever a man complained. Near the open smithy, Talisa sat on a low stool, wrapping boiled leather round a youth's frostbitten wrist, murmuring the soft Roynish lullaby she had begun singing to their son each night. The babe slept in a wicker cradle at her feet, woolen swaddling warmed by a hound curled close for body heat. Gray wind prowled the yard's perimeter, pausing now and again to nose the blanket, then trotted back to the gates, sentry as much as wolf. Caitlin followed Rob's gaze to wife, son, dire wolf. "The gods gave you much to lose, and I will lose none of it," Rob said, iron under snow. He turned toward the tower stair. "Draft the march order, mother. Deepwood's larders are full, but winter eats faster than any host. We leave enough grain for Lady Sibel's folk, yet strip every store we can carry." "Done," Caitlin replied, though her bones ached from nights without sleep. "But know this, even shortened columns move slow through drifts. If the wall is your aim, consider the seas again. Manderley's banners fly wolf-gray once more." "Manderley's ports are frozen," Rob countered, yet she saw uncertainty cloud his features. He had learned to doubt his first instinct, and that doubt had saved them more than once. "I will speak with Lord Glover," he said finally. "We weigh every road." As they descended, the blizzard thickened, until ramparts vanished behind them, swallowed as if the world itself were closing its jaws. Yet when the great hall's doors swung wide, heat met them like a forge blast. Benches pushed back to walls left space for a council ring around a map table strewn with pine boughs. Above, the rafters dripped melted rime onto hearthstone crackling with logs. The scent of broth built upon that warmth, and hunger gnawed Caitlin's stomach despite exhaustion. Rob's captains gathered, Meege Mormont, Lady of Bear Island, snow still crusted on her pauldron; Galbart Glover, Sir Helman Tallheart, arm bound from a fry quarrel but eyes burning bright; Roderick Harlaw of the Iron Isles, gray hair oiled behind ears in uneasy fealty; Lord Wool, who spat blood into the flames each time he spoke. They quieted when Rob stepped forward, and even the fire seemed to hush. "The time for raiding bodies is ended," he began. "The dead now gather on two fronts. Bolton remnants behind us still hold Winterfell in charred misery, and rumors speak of figures in blue flame stalking the shivering seashore." He set a gloved finger to the heart of winter on the map's blank northern wastes. "White walkers, whites, shadows, we name them all enemy. The wall must not fall. If it does, every hall from Dorne to the Vale is but a grave with warmer walls." Meege slammed her fist, rattling cups. "Bear Island stands, and marches, and bleeds," Galbart added. "But I, the neck to the snows, we follow you, Robb Stark." Roderick Harlaw spoke last, voice measured. "My men are sailors, not hunters of ice, yet ironborn no raiders. If these dead are raiders of the living, we meet them on water where steel may yet answer sorcery." Robb considered. "We split," he declared at last. "Glover and Mormont ride with me to Castle Black. Harlaw sails south round the neck with those who can man oars. 70 longships were taken at Seaguard. We strike the weeping water, cut Bolton supply lines, starve them behind Winterfell's walls." He looked to Tallheart. "Ser Helman guards Deepwood until the rest return. Should Castle Black fall, this hall may be last bulwark." Tallheart managed a salute with his good arm. "Rely on me, sire." They drank salt broth mixed with cider while details were carved. Ration charts, smithing schedules, lists of pigs slaughtered for travel salt pork. Caitlin oversaw parchment flow, sealing each scroll with dark wax bearing the direwolf. Ink smeared. The cold made fingers clumsy, yet each mark hammered fate. When quills were finally set aside, the blizzard had weakened to a steady hush. Men dispersed to their duties, and Rob lingered by the hearth alone. Caitlin approached, wordless. Rob stared into flames that gnawed pine to embers. "I saw Father here," he whispered. Not a dream. When the fire cracked, his shadow stood in the sparks. He said nothing, only watched. "The dead watch," she murmured, touching his shoulder. "What matters is that the living answer." He nodded but did not smile. Gray light bled across sky when the column formed beyond Deepwood's gate. Snow lay knee-deep. Men stomped paths between ditches, stamping feet to keep toes alive. Horns moaned farewell. Talisa held baby Ned tight, cloak wrapped about them both. Robb clasped her face, kissed brow, lips, then pressed foreheads until breath mingled frost. "If I fall, you rise?" She cut him off. "Starks always rise." She pressed a vial satchel into his glove. Elixirs of willow bark and poppy, salves of comfrey and pine resin. "For wounds I cannot reach." He tucked it to his breast. "For wounds none can." Then he bent to cradle his son's tiny head, cooing some memory of a lullaby. Gray wind nudged the infant, breath steaming. Ned gripped the wolf's fur with unthinking trust. The wolf chuffed, satisfaction in yellow eyes. Caitlin kissed them both, though her heart fissured anew. She mounted a Garen, helm slung to saddle, and took place beside Robb under the wolf banner. Meege Mormont hefted a spiked mace taller than most men. Galbart's green and silver fish glimmered frost along its stitching. Horns keened once more, and 3,000 souls bent into wind, trudging toward unseen terror. For 2 days they fought drifts waist-high, each step thieving breath. Nights brought tents pitched in circular clusters around roaring pits where pine and alder burned blue-green. Snow melted to slush. Boots dried only long enough to freeze again when laced for the march. Yet spirits held. At each supper, Small John led songs of the first winter wolves, how they followed a white reindeer to safety while giants warred overhead. Even Harlaw men joined, banging shields to tempo. On the third dawn, ravens found them, wild birds mottled ash and pearl. They circled thrice, then alit upon Robb's standard, caught a ragged chorus, and burst north again. Scouts sent ahead returned breathless. Wildlings beyond the Queen's Crown ruins held camps ringed by sharpened stakes, but not hostile. They waited. Robb pushed the march until torches guttered blue with fatigue. When banners finally breached the treeline of the Queen's Crown ridge, they faced a semicircle of wildlings, horned giants kneeling to loom like towers, then warriors bare-armed though the air cut like daggers, spearwives in furs painted with crimson moon sigils. At their fore stood Mance Raider, a glaive planted in the snow. Robb dismounted, stepped forward with only Caitlin and Grey Wind beside him. "King," he greeted. Mance inclined his head, equal parts courtesy and challenge. "I bring half the free folk." Mance's voice carried over wind. "The rest scatter north to hunt what hunts us. Dead things, pale as moon milk, eyes blue as glacial flame." Robb said, "We march to meet the same. Will you fight beside us?" Mance looked past him, measuring the stark line. Mummers and lords, bare-cloaked women, chain-shirt boys wide-eyed but resolute. "Winter's teeth don't care for crowns," he said. We fight. Feed my folk after, give them lands to till where lords have room. That is the price. And fealty? To no kneeler throne." Mance's smile held frost. "But to the memory of your Ned Stark, who spared free folk at the wall when he might have swung the ice." He planted the glaive deeper. "His blood buys trust." Caitlin's breath caught. She recalled Eddard's long, silent hours reading letters from Maester Eamon, eyes storm-dark with guilt that he had not done more for the wild and wandering north. She whispered, "He would have approved this bargain." Robb held out his forearm. Mance clasped just below the elbow. Around them, men exhaled fog like dragons freed. A cheer rose low, then higher, rippling across humans and giants until even the storm seemed quieter. That night, the camps merged. Caitlin walked among strange cookfires where hares seethed in antler-hemmed kettles and acorn bread baked on stones. She stopped to help a spearwife bind pants on a coughing toddler. The woman blinked suspicion, then gratitude when Caitlin pressed a silver needle through cloth. Fear thawed under balm of necessity. Within a pine shelter, Jon Snow waited, cloak black as a starless sky. Gray wind greeted Ghost with a snuffling bump. The albino direwolf's scarlet eyes softened only for his pack brother. Jon rose as Robb entered, and for a long hush they simply clasped shoulders. Grief and wonder mingled. Catelyn felt tears threaten. She blinked until her vision cleared to witness all. "We thought you slain," Jon said. "And I you," Robb answered, voice rough. "But wolves bear scars." He gestured for Catelyn. She embraced Jon, feeling the hardness of muscle wrought by winters few Southrons could guess. "The wall stands because of you," she whispered. "It stands for now." Jon's eyes were old. "The fist of the first men is lost. The dead moved like wind. We burned brothers too slow to run." Robb's jaw flexed. "Then we cannot be slow." Jon unfolded a crude map etched on dark cloth. "They gather at the Shadowfort's ruins. Thousands. Walkers command from ridge spurs. Fire slows them but does not stop them. Valyrian steel and dragonglass shatter them." He produced a pouch. Inside glinted midnight shards flecked with obsidian snow. "The clans of the Frostfangs mined these at risk of their souls." Robb took one, weighing its chill weight. "We arm every man able." Jon nodded. "Maester Aemon sent ravens south for larger caches, but wings freeze. You brought smiths." "Some." Catelyn's voice filled the gloom. "Dragonglass must be knapped, not forged. Yet arrowheads, spear tips, yes." They spent the black hours sorting obsidian by size, filling waxed leathers. Catelyn watched the brothers work, hands mirroring motions though they had grown apart under different suns. She thought of Bran and Rickon, of Arya lost somewhere in war's sprawl, and Sansa a hostage bride. A mother's heart stretched too wide, stitched by hope. Morning rose brittle, sky a shard of blue glass. The host moved like a vast river. Northern knights on shaggy coursers, wildling mammoths draped in boar hides, giants dragging trees as clubs, crannig outriders pole vaulting between hummocks of frozen bog. Catelyn rode at the king's center. Snow stung her cheeks until she scarcely felt flesh, only the burn of will. They reached the wall's shadow by dusk, but Castle Black had changed. Trenches packed with oily peat circled the outer curtain. Tar-coated ballista bolts lay stacked like black lightning. Men in black moved with focused haste. No garrison now, but a fortress awake. When Lord Mormont's old raven croaked snow, Jon led Robb through new-cut gates wide enough for mammoths. Wildlings parted before him in uneasy respect. Samwell Tarly greeted them in maester's gray, face flushed from run across yard. "Only 20 archmesters believed our letters," he panted. "But they sent what DRA dragonglass they possessed. More on the way if the seas thaw." He blurted the words as if each might freeze before it finished. Catelyn clasped his mittened hands. "You are the fat boy who saved Lord Commander's life," she remembered Bran writing once.
Some flushed deeper.
"Still fat, my lady, but less a boy, I hope." Robb set him at ease with a smile. "Less than many knights I've met. Thank you." He turned to builders shaping spiked barricades. "Tonight we rest. Tomorrow we dig." Under torchlight, trenches extended east and west along the base of the wall, forming a jagged mouth. Pitch and lamp oil poured from barrels into frost-cracked furrows. Giants hauled boulders onto sledges. Wildlings cut spruce logs to sharpen ends. Mormont's raven hopped along parapets cawing burn, with each spill of black liquor. Blacksmith Donal Noy oversaw the fitting of dragonglass heads to ash shafts, cursing soft as rivets rang. Catelyn spent dark hours in the infirmary of a repurposed stable. Wounded rangers lay on straw pallets, delirious with frostbitten dreams. She cleaned rot from digits turned black, lanced pus swollen under cheeks purple as bruised plums. Talisa, having braved rough seas to join, met her there. Together they stitched, salved, whispered prayers to an old and patient God neither fully understood. When dawn came the next 2 days later, the horizon glimmered unnatural blue. Snow clouds stacked like ramparts of ice giants. A horn blast trembled through permafrost. Jon ascended the wall's outer stair, Robb alongside. Catelyn following those steps seemed carved from fear itself. Atop, the world unrolled bleak beyond imagination. South lay the refuge of watchfires, but north stretched emptiness shivering in sunlight. And then, like ghosts forming from breath, they saw the army. It advanced without haste. Ranks of corpses crusted white, whites milling in silent obedience.
Interspersed rode pijl shapes astride skeletal beasts, armor emitting moonlit frost.
Between them glided figures taller than any mortal, skin like bluish marble, eyes twin burning suns of winter. The others, Jon's voice was iron. Fire the trenches when they close. Signal torches flared. Rams of mammoth bone waited at catwalk lever points. Catelyn pressed palms to her cloak's lining, feeling hidden knives of dragonglass sheathed there. She wondered whether courage were something that could bleed away drop by drop. If so, she thought, she had lost all but the last bead, and that she guarded like a gem. The dead halted just beyond bowshot. One other rode forward alone, helm shaped to mimic antlers of frozen crystal. It raised a sword carved of ice so clear daylight warped within. With that gesture, the white ranks parted. A child stepped forth. No, a corpse of a child, hair plaited in the braids of guttural northern clans now extinct. Its mouth opened. A shriek cut the air sharper than any steel. Snow gusted sideways in sudden gale. Jon raised Longclaw as answer. Robb unsheathed Icebreaker, a Valyrian blade gifted by the Mormonts. Dark ripples shining red in dawn. Two kings on mirrored parapets stared the other down. Grey Wind and Ghost stood at flank, fangs bared. The child shambled nearer the trench. Arrows loosed from rangers along the rampart, each tip a glint of obsidian. They hissed, struck with soft crunches, and the tiny white burst into shards of frost. A wail like distant chimes rippled through the army, whether rage or mocking laughter none could say. And then the host advanced. Trumpets blared. Giants launched boulders that smashed bone into powder. Mammoths charged earthworks, trampling whites beneath broad hooves. At Jon's shout, pitch-soaked trenches lit, roaring walls of orange that melted air. Bodies collapsed into ash, shriveling like leaves tossed on coals. Yet the walkers strode unburnt, cold aura extinguishing flame along their path. They raised blades, and ice spears formed in midair, arcing to impale giants' bellies, shattering ribcages accused of warmth. Robb roared orders from the ground. Flank teams rushed dragonglass-dipped pikes to the weakening line. Catelyn, sheltered behind a mound of quarried limestone, used a loom of pine boughs as triage shade. She cut clothing from screaming wildlings, poured boiling wine over bites turning gray. Talisa pressed snowpacks to stanch burns when pitch splashed companions. Each heart's beat sounded louder than drums. Above, Jon leapt from the wall's edge, harnessed to a massive rope rigged by builders. He slid down into the melee, Longclaw carving arcs of purple-black. Where Valyrian steel met ice, frost exploded in bursts of sapphire. Robb charged another breach, Grey Wind clearing a path with savage lunges. They fought near back-to-back, two halves of a coin minted in blood. Another stepped before Robb, blade humming as if drinking warmth. They circled. Every breath in the yard seemed to wait. The walker struck first, a cut swift as thought. Robb parried, Icebreaker shivering but unbroken. Sparks of rhyme spiraled. The walker thrust. Robb rolled beneath slash, came up slashing hip. Ice fractured. Pale essence hissed like wind through reeds. Another blow, and the walker's leg cracked. Yet before Robb could finish, three more whites swarmed. Grey Wind intercepted one, jaws crunching spine. Robb spun, severed a second's neck. The third lunged with rusted spear. Point grazed Robb's thigh, drawing crimson spray across snow. Catelyn's scream tore free, but her son rose, eyes blazing. He kicked the white back, drove Icebreaker down, shattering skull and spear alike. The walker limped, arms yawing to raise an icy gale. Robb staggered in white maelstrom, cloak snapping like torn sail, vision freezing. Then Jon was there, Longclaw plunging through the walker's chest. A crack like splitting mountains boomed. The creature broke apart, shards blowing away as if weightless. The gale ceased. Around them, remaining whites faltered, some collapsing with limbs twitching as blue lights drained from sockets. A hush fell, pierced only by the low, mournful cry of Mormont's raven. But victory was not yet named. From the forest edge emerged new figures. White bears dead yet walking, their hides patched with frost rot. Spiders big as dogs, carapace rimed in hoarfrost. And behind them, two massive shapes like men carved of glacier pushed through trees, each step shaking earth. Frost giants, the myths called them. Their eyes were pits of bottomless azure. Wildling giants met them. Mag the mighty, last of his line, bellowed a challenge that cracked ice. He charged, club swinging. One frost giant caught the blow, ice fingers fracturing around would yet holding. Mag strained, sinews bulging. The second frost giant raised a foot heavy as stone. Robb shouted. Men loosed dragonglass javelins, but they shattered on crystalline hide. Fire! Jon cried. Archers dipped cloth bundles in pitch, lit them, launched at joints. Flame blossomed. Ice steamed and cracked anew. Mag roared triumph as his club freed, smashing into a giant's knee. The frost giant toppled, crushing dozens of whites. The second swung an icicle mace that sent Mag sprawling, ribs cracking. Still, the living surged, hacking at ankles with axes borrowed from woodcutters, jabbing spears of jet into glowing fissures. Catelyn knelt by wounded, but her eyes stayed upon the brothers. Robb limped, blood freezing on thigh, yet he pushed forward to Mag's side, hacking at fractured shins. Jon climbed the fallen frost giant's torso, plunging long claw deep into frozen chest. A thunderous moan echoed as icy heart burst, spraying a blizzard that doused fires. The standing frost giant faltered. Mag regained footing, bellowed one last war cry, and with Robb's help drove the shattered club into Giant's groin. Concussive force split ice upward. The creature burst apart, shards raining like lethal hail.
Mag collapsed, mortally wounded.
Robb knelt, pressed a hand to the giant's forehead. Mag's eyes met his, and the giant smiled, teeth red. He spoke one word, brother, then stilled. Silence rolled across battlefield. Whites lay strewn in tatters, the remaining walkers retreating to tree shadow. Atop the wall, watch horns sounded triumph laced with warning. More dead remained in distance, wandering aimless without masters. Catelyn sagged to knees beside a collapsed barricade, tears tracking grime. Jon and Robb stood together among ruin, direwolves at their heels. Snow fell light again, gentle as blessing. But evening brought grim inventory. 1/4 of the living host lay dead, another quarter wounded. Giants all but extinct. Mammoths driven south in panic. Pitch stores dwindled, obsidian largely spent. Yet the walkers had tasted defeat, perhaps for first time since memory of man. Jon convened council inside the mess hall. Frost still rimed Robb's beard. Talisa cleaned and stitched the wound while he sat at table.
Some detailed losses.
Wildling speaker Rattleshirt demanded land now, not later, for compensation. Meej Mormont silenced him with glare. They argued deep into night. At last Robb rose, limping to hearth. "We cannot hold another assault here," he said. "Our strength bleeds faster than theirs. We must strike heart to heart." He turned to Jon. "You know their weakness. Where is the heart?" "Their source is rumored at the Frostfang's hidden lake," Jon said slowly. "At the Night Fort's legend creation place of the First Other. It lies beyond the milk water, through caves men dread." "Then we ride there," Robb declared, voice steady. "A vanguard small, swift, bearing dragonsteel and wildfire. End the winter at its root." Silence answered. Lady Meej banged but of mace. "Bears follow. Small to men south of the neck, perhaps." Jon looked to Catelyn. "It may be folly." She met his stare. "Sometimes folly is faith, and faith is what wins wars when steel falters." She straightened, weary yet unbowed. "Take me with you. I have tended wounds all my life. You will need hands that heal as well as hands that kill." Robb opened mouth to protest. She raised a finger, forestalling. No mother wishes to watch her sons vanish into darkness again. Her gaze flicked from him to Jon. "Let me walk by your side this time." Robb's shoulders sagged, but he bowed his head. "As you will." He looked around. "We leave at dawn. 10 score riders, no wagons. Each man carries enough dragonglass for 10 kills. Wildfire vials to light mountains, hearts willing to burn." Jon added softly, "And perhaps one chance to see spring." Preparations began. Sam recovered hidden stores of Maester's wildfire sealed since Aegon the Unworthy's time. Vials sealed in clay eggs painted with green flame. Rattleshirt, grudging respect earned, offered then axemen. Bran's old friend Mira Reed arrived with ribboat raiders, claiming secret paths through frozen bog tunnels. The host that remained would maintain wall defense, commanded by Galbart and the Black Brothers led by Bowen Marsh. Before dawn mellowed night, Catelyn visited Giant's Cove where Mag's body lay surrounded by wildling chants. They honored him with torches bound to mammoth tusks, setting pyre aflame. Sparks rose to mingle with stars. She whispered a prayer to any god still awake in winter, and let tears ignite on cheeks. At the gates, Talisa stood with baby Ned. She placed the babe in Robb's arms, eyes shimmering but untearful. "Come back with music," she said. "Else I will play dirges until your ghost begs silence." She kissed him, then Jon, surprising them both. "2 wolves, 1 soul," she murmured. "Share the burden." She kissed Catelyn's brow last, pressing a fresh satchel into her hands. "New needles," she said, "for stitching the world." The vanguard rode out. Direwolves loping ahead, Catelyn side-saddled on a shaggy Garen. Robb and Jon armored in black and steel echo, their blades silent but hungry. Behind, others followed, Mormont bears, then axes, Crannog's frog spears, Harlow reavers who had abandoned salt for snow. Overhead, a single raven circled, croaking blood, as if hungry for more tales. For days they plunged through wastes where auroras danced like spectral banners. Ghosts of wind whispered old names. Brandon the Builder, Simeon Stareyes, Queen Nymeria of the Rhoyne. They crossed the frozen milk water upon ice thick as castle walls, hearing undercurrents humming like distant thunder. Nights huddled in ice caves lit by dragonglass lamps, heatless yet blinding. Twice white packs attacked, but dragonglass scythes felled them swiftly, no walkers guiding. On the 7th day, they reached a basin wreathed in unnatural stillness. A circular lake lay frozen, surface smooth as mirror reflecting moon's razor edge. At its center rose an island of black obsidian ribs, spikes jutting like petrified dragon teeth. Every footstep nearer chilled marrow deeper than mere cold. Ranger Owen ventured onto ice. 2 strides and it cracked, swallowing him whole. The sound that followed soared high, echoing like warbugs of Yin. From the obsidian island, blue flares blinked awake. Eyes, dozens, watching. The walkers formed, ringing the island. Behind them, above the ribs, a crystal tree of ice gleamed. At its heart beat a lump of blue-white fire, pulsing slow as glacier, but bright enough to cast long shadows. "The source," Robb whispered. "Light it, and the winter dies." Jon's gloves trembled on Longclaw's hilt. "Or burns the world." "Burn it first, mend the world after," growled Meej. She hefted a cask of wildfire strapped to her back. They tied ropes around waist, crept along edge where ice seemed thickest. Gray wind and ghost paced, hackles bristling at unseen notes in air. Catelyn gripped her dragonglass stiletto, lamenting she had not the strength to carry heavier. Wind-stung eyes watery. Halfway across, the lake beneath Robb dimmed, as though absorbing all starlight. A walker advanced, sword raised. Jon sprang to meet it. Steel clanged. Sparks of frost spiraled. Robb hefted torch soaked in wildfire, flinging it at the walker's feet. Green flame erupted, sticky, hungry. The walker shrieked, body warping, shards flying. Others hissed, retreating, but some brave wights charged, ice cracking under weight. Catelyn advanced with Meej and Mira, hauling clay eggs in nets. Arrows whizzed overhead, Sam's archers on ridge loosing obsidian shafts. Giants launched spear logs across gap, forming makeshift bridges that shattered after each crossing to hinder pursuit. One by one, the vanguard reached the island's slick shore. The obsidian spires hummed, a sound like deep harp strings. Air crystallized. Their footsteps left glowing indents. At the base of the ice tree, frost-webbed corpses lay. First men's sacrifice remains. Their eyes bright still. Catelyn's stomach churned. Robb and Jon approached the heart flame. Heatless, yet her cheeks burned near it. Jon unhooked satchel of dragonglass grenades. Thin blown glass orbs filled with dust and oil. Robb unscrewed wildfire jar. "On my mark," he whispered. But from behind the crystalline trunk stepped a figure robed in midnight ice, taller than any yet seen. Its crown was antlers of frozen fire. In its hands, a spear of night steel that sang with wind. Eyes older than continents fixed upon the brothers. When it spoke, breath sounded like glaciers calving. "Your fire ends here." The thrust. Robb parried spear shaft. Impact flung him aside like child's doll. Jon lunged, long claw carving upward. The spear spun, deflecting, sparks of frost singing. Meej roared, swung mace at Ice King's spine. The weapon shattered like glass, sending shards into her arm. She fell, howling. Catelyn ran to her, binding shredded muscle with quick wrap. Mira drew frog spear, lunged. The Ice King seized shaft, hurled her into spire where she lay motionless. The ground quaked. More walkers encircled. Hourglass sands drained in heartbeats. Catelyn reached for last wildfire egg meant to ignite core. She whispered prayer to Mother above, then screamed to Robb. He turned as spear hammered shield, catching her toss. He caught the egg, palm blistering, then rolled beneath another thrust, coming up beside Jon. They exchanged silent pact. Jon feinted left, drawing spear follow. Robb sprang right, egg held high. The spear lashed back. Jon parried, but point scraped his collar, ripping chain, scoring flesh. Blood steamed. Jon sank to knee. Wolf howl erupted. Ghost launched onto Ice King's shoulders, jaws clamping crystalline crown, hind legs pushing claws across frost. The spear skewed upward, stabbing sky. Robb darted in, smashed wildfire egg against heartflame. Green exploded. Light devoured darkness with shriek that tore heavens. Wildfire fused with blue heart, turning white, then violet, then sunbright. Ice King convulsed. Ghost leapt free. The spear melted into mist. Walkers around burst like glass touched by hammer shockwaves. Waves of heat and cold collided. Swirling storm of color that blinded sight, scoured skin. Catelyn threw herself over Meej's body. Flames licked but did not burn. She heard wolves howling, giants shouting, humans crying out names lost in roar, and ever rising, a tone like singing glass, then silence, complete, absolute, crushing. She opened eyes. The lake ice had become steam, swirling away to reveal dark water. The obsidian island cracked, fissures glowing where heart flame once pulsed. There, in hollow center, blue fire still burned, but reduced, flickering. Jon knelt before it, long claw driven into ground, head bowed. Robb lay nearby, cloak aflame, but flames receded into nothing, smoke curling from hair. He coughed, rolled to elbows. Catelyn crawled to him, tears freezing in hair. "You breathe?" she gasped. "Enough to finish," he rasped. The remnant flame flickered again. Catelyn saw within it shapes. Children of the forest dancing round weirwood. Men killing children, blood mixing with obsidian, cold wind rising. She felt despair flicker. But Jon reached into flame barehanded, gripping some unseen thing. His scream cut like knife, flesh seared black as soot. Yet he held, and with a wrench pulled free a shard of milk crystal, pulsing weak blue. He flung it onto rock. Robb raised dragonglass dagger, brought it down. The shard cracked, then burst into countless motes that winked out under starlight. The lake went dark. Around edges, whites fell inert, bodies reclaiming unnatural rest. Walkers collapsed in chain of shatters. Wind died. An aurora cascaded overhead, then faded, as if curtain dropped on act of ancient play. Silence endured until wolves howled triumph. First gray wind, then ghost, call answered by living throats of wildlings and Northmen alike on distant shores. Catelyn pressed burnt hands to Jon's, wrapping cloth soaked with snowmelt to cool. Robb embraced them both, tears steaming off cheeks. Meej stirred, groaning, but alive. Mira limped forward, spear splintered but spirit whole. Night sky deepened, stars unmarred. Jon coughed, voice hoarse. Is it done? Robb looked across still water where frost now melted to gentle fog. Winter broke, he whispered, awe softening iron. Yet seasons still turn. We must guide them. Catelyn, kneeling between suns, felt warmth not of wildfire but of spring's distant promise brush her cheeks. She realized she still clutched her stitching needles, blood-stained, bent, yet unbroken. As the world exhaled around them, she began to hope these small instruments might now mend more than flesh, might mend kingdoms sundered by fear, hearts frozen by grief, hopes shattered under ice. She closed eyes briefly, and in that darkness saw blooms of crocus pushing through snow. The return south was slow, wounded carried by sled, fallen honored with pyres whose smoke carried on gentle wind rather than storm. At Castle Black, survivors raised a pyre for giants, another for free folk, another for watch brothers. Songs tangled, wildling laments, Northman dirges, the trembling plainsong of the faith of the seven sung by Sam in cracked tenor. Firelight flickered across faces once hardened, now softened by shared deliverance. Word flew on warm winds. At Winterfell, Ramsay's Bolton banners drooped under thawing drizzle. When rumors claimed the walkers destroyed, Bolton men mutinied, opening gates to Manderley's host. Roose was found dead, knife through cold heart, eyes still upon the north that had abandoned him. In King's Landing, Cersei heard the same rumor. Some said she laughed until wine spilled. Others swore she wept, for without the winter's terror to keep lords obedient, the realm's debts fell heavier. Across the sea, dragons wheeled over Meereen, golden scales catching sunrise, and Daenerys Targaryen smiled at tidings of northern kings who broke death itself. But at Deepwood Motte, Talisa felt first warm breeze brush her infant's cheeks. Ned gurgled, eyes sky blue like mother's homeland rivers, and reached for drifting mote of sunlit dust. She whispered a promise to him, that the world he grew to see would remember the night winter died not only for blood and fire, but for hands that healed, for songs sung over shared hearths, and for two brothers who stood back to back at the end of all things and refused extinction. Far north, on edge of shattered lake now thawing, the ice ribs sank beneath water, leaving ripples that glimmered silver in dawn. Dire wolves loped along shore, noses lifted to scent of pine not frozen. Spring crept forth on paws soft and silent, and though snow would fall again, it would never carry quite the same chill.
Snowmeltde
Rummed from the black stone of Castle Black in steady rivulets, pooling on flagstones where ice had ruled unbroken since the wall's founding. Ravens dipped beaks to drink, surprised croaks echoing against timber towers patched hastily after the siege. The scent of thaw, peat, pitch soot, blood gone rusty, wove with new smells. Bread baking in deep ovens, boiling tallow for candles, pine resin heating in tar kettles. Life, raw and stubborn, had crept back into every crack the winter army left behind. Robb Stark limped across the yard with Jon at his flank, gray wind and ghost padding ahead like pale shadows of one wolf soul. Maester Samwell, though the chain still felt awkward on his broad neck, hurried beside them, reciting casualty tallies and grain estimates. Each figure seemed a wound reopened. 243 dead from the vanguard, Sam said, scanning the wax tablet. 59 succumbed to wounds last night, 73 fit for duty within the fortnight. Wildling losses heavier. Mance has not given full count, but I fear more than half. Robb stopped before the shattered practice butts. Charred spears jutted like black teeth. Write the dead of every clan and house on one ledger, he told Sam. No wildling column, no northern column, just names. carve them on the same stone when we have stone to carve. The world should remember a single host stood here. Sam pushed round spectacles higher on the bridge of his nose. Yes, your grace. He hurried off, quill already scratching. John watched him go, a faint curve of pride on his lips. I should knight him, he murmured, if the watch allowed knighthoods. Rob's grin came slow, rueful. When this is done, brother, we'll write a new code for the watch. You shall be its first Lord Commander with spurs. First ex-Lord Commander, mayhap, John answered. Once word of our venture north reaches Old Town, archmasters will debate oaths and vows deeper than any mine we dug for dragonglass. But that fight I can stomach. He sobered. There's another brewing. Bowen Marsh would keep the free folk fenced behind the wall forever. Mance Raider will not accept that. We bought peace on the lake with more than death. We'll honor it, Rob said. A crown that breaks oaths is worth as much as a blunted sword. He flexed his wounded thigh, brow creasing only slightly now. I mean to ride for Winterfell before first harvest. Free folk willing to settle can claim the lands Bolton pillaged. The Bar Rolands, the Hornwood Fields, parts of the Stony Shore. They'll answer to northern law, but they'll eat northern bread too. The Umbers balked at the thought 2 nights past. I'll speak to them again. John gave a low whistle. Convince the Umbers to host wildlings at their hearths, and I'll call you miracle worker thrice over. Across the yard, a shaggy giant calf, Mag's orphan nephew, named Stone after the surviving men dragged him from a pit of corpses, shuffled after Meege Mormont as she barked at blacksmiths, riveting a breastplate large enough to fit his growing chest. The sight drew smiles even from bruised faces. Caitlin watched from the infirmary porch where she and Talisa scrubbed instruments in boiled wine. You've built a chancy pack, John said. Giants, free folk, ironborn deserters, Crannog raiders. And rumors down the King's Road claim the last Valeman mountain clans have begun north with stolen airy goats to pledge fealty, hoping to fight under the king who slays winter. Rob's cheeks colored at the title. Songs lie more than they sing, but let songs spread. When we reach Winterfell, spears will follow. 2 weeks later, fresh-hewn banners streamed from every walkway. Direwolf, bear, trout, green forked lightning for the Crannog, black kraken claw over ice to mark Harlaw's renegades. Mance Raider's red-tipped weirwood branch fluttered above the free folk encampment outside the West Sally Gate, a sigil born only days before, drawn by a girl of the Ice River clans and offered shyly to the king beyond the wall. Mance pinned it to a spear haft and declared, "No man refuses a child's banner unless he means to break her world." They assembled on the King's Road's frozen spine at dawn. 3,000 able, 1,000 herd enough to ride wagons, dozens of giants and mammoths, and near 500 free folk afoot, hunters, spearwives, raw-boned youths whose eyes had emptied of fear that night upon the lake. Caitlin sat her Garen between Talisa's mule and Mira Reed's lithe palfrey. Needles and salves filled her saddlebags. Bran would laugh, she thought. His dream of her astride at the center of armies come true at last, though the notion had once seemed as foolish as summer snow. John took command of the rearguard, cloak rippling foxblack as he strode the ranks giving last instructions. Rob rode to the fore, ironbreaker resting across his thighs, gray wind ahead as point. The gatehouse trumpets sounded, thin but resolute. They moved. South of the Gift, the road widened where Bolton levees had flattened forest to feed their march north months earlier. Now pine saplings thrust through churned loam like green pennants reclaiming ground. The host followed cairns of white bones piled and burned by vanguard work parties, white waymarkers guiding them home. On the 4th day, scouts returned with a singular prize. A man trussed over a saddle like slaughtered boar. Eric Flint hurled the captive before Rob's horse. "We caught a crow spider bolt picker spying lines," he said, jerking the hood away. The man's face was sharp, pale as parchment beneath road filth. A pink bolt wound puckered just below the throat where healing had begun poorly. He bore no house sigil, but under his tunic flayed man tattoos spiraled black and ugly across collarbones. Rob dismounted. "Your name?" The captive spat blood-tinged bile. "No name for stark ears." Rob's gaze chilled. A daggerman of the bastard's men, then. I thought them all slunk away. Some of us slunk south to New Gold, the man rasped. Fry gold, Lannister gold. The vulture kings yet feed. A growl low in gray winds throat silenced murmurs. Robb considered. You watched our march? Reported by Raven to the twins? The daggerman smiled a lipless smile. Walder's new heirs pay better than any butcher's boy king. Catelyn stepped forward despite herself. Butcher's boy, she echoed softly. That was Joffrey's taunt for Micah. She knelt eye level with the prisoner. Tell me, daggerman, do fry pursers pay in coin or carrion? He sneered. She drove a needle dipped in Maester's bane beneath the old wound in his neck. He jerked, surprise blooming to pain. That's fenugreek and barley water to draw out rot, she said, voice like winter glass. It burns sharper each breath. Answer and I remove it. Lie and your throat swells shut. His eyes rolled. Fry pursers pay in coin, milady, he croaked. Old Walder dead, sons at war. Black Walder rules one tower, Lothar the other. They share only hatred of wolves. Robb nodded to Small John Umber. Hang him upside down from the crossbeam of the next bridge we cross. Loose the fetter when we return this way. Let the white knife decide his penance. The prisoner wept curses as flints dragged him off. Robb mounted. Now every raven on the trident will shriek that we come, he said. Let them. I'd rather meet foes in field than shadow. That night, as campfires dotted a dell near Long Lake, Jon found Catelyn bent over boiling cloth strips. You threatened that man with infection. I threatened him with truth, she said, wringing linen until steam fogged her eyes. Pain teaches honesty faster than bloodshed now. Too many scars on this land already. Jon crouched. You and I share more than Ned's bloodline. We learned war's price from men who never saw it. Lords who played Syvass with living pawns. I'll stand with you if kinder tools fail. She smiled faintly. Let us hope needles continue to win confessions before swords must. Moat Caelan's towers loomed ahead 5 days later. Direwolf banners rippling atop stones scoured clean of flayed men. The neck beyond lay a living labyrinth. Mira guided them through causeways where pale grasses hid black water, her frog spears tapping mud like diviners. Wildling trackers marveled at hallucinant bird calls echoing between reed beds. In gray dusk they reached the ruins of Harrenhal, a forgotten wakeheap once manned by House Cray, now a shell where wind played organ through broken arches. Fires lit the courtyard. As captains gathered to plan the final leg, a horn sounded from the north approach. Riders approached, armored knights cloaked in striped green and white, a silver trout rampant on felt. Edmure Tully reigned at the gate, cheeks ruddy beneath new beard. Behind him flew 50 Riverland riders and twice as many peasant levies with pitchforks bound in copper wire. Edmure dismounted, strode to Robb and fell to one knee. My king, he began, but Robb pulled him upright into a fierce embrace. How did you escape the twins? Robb asked when words returned. Edmure's grin skewed roguish. Escape? I walked out the front gate while Fry sons pissed daggers at each other over which one laid claim to Old Walder's gouty throne. Lothar hopes for reach backing. Black Walderbegs gold from King's Landing. None spared guards to watch a captive groom. He sobered. Jane Westerling died in childbed a month past at the twins. One more ghost Walder's halls must host. Robb bowed head. May she find peace. Before grief could thicken the air, Lady Meege pounded mace to stone. Enough dirges. The lioness in the south forges chains while we mourn. Ride, fish lords, or the river chokes. Edmure turned, surprised at the sight of free folk, tent clusters and giants dozing. 7 save us, he breathed. If Hoster could see this muster, he'd call it a tavern yarn. Catelyn clasped his arm. Father might indeed, but he'd also see banners enough to shake King's Landing. And he'd forgive miracles their strangeness. They fed the newcomers oatcakes and salt pork. Edmure traded gossip. Tywin dead in the capital's privy. Cersei's regency dissolving under debt. The Iron Bank courting the Tyrell Rose. The Dornish assembled spears at Prince's Pass, uncertain whom to strike. And across the narrow sea, dragons had scarred the slave ports to ash. Meereen's harbor choked with burnt warships. Robb listened long. At last he stood before the mapfire. If Lannister coffers crumble and Frey sons squabble, then we strike swift. Winterfell first. We cannot ride for King's Landing with our home in ruins. Cheers greeted the name Winterfell. Some ragged, some hoarse, but each heartfelt. Mance Rayder raised his weirwood banner. We'll bleed for your nest, Wolf King, he declared. Then you bleed for the hearths we build. So sworn, Robb answered. The march through the Wolfswood quickened pace. Pathways widened by Bolton axes offered grim convenience. Storms held off, as if seasons themselves kept vigil. On the 20th dawn, the High Watch cried, "Smoke to east." Scouts returned. Bolton banners lowered, Manderley men upon the walls, flayed corpses at the gate. Robb spurred ahead with 200 mounted. Catelyn followed, heart tumbling. Winterfell appeared over the ridge, its familiar towers half rebuilt, outer palisade ringed by fresh earthworks. Above the broken gatehouse flew 3 banners: Direwolf, Silver Merman, and a rag fashioned of Bolton pink with a rent slash through the flayed man. Beneath hung Roos's skin sigil twisted into a noose. Lord Wyman Manderley waited astride a palfrey plainly straining at girth. He doffed a cap of white wool when Robb rode up. "My king," he intoned with theatrical gravity. "I deliver you your father's seat, cleansed in blood and ale by good Northmen, stark true." Robb dismounted, clasped the Lord's hand. "You have my thanks and more." Manderley's cheeks flushed. "No thanks, sire, only vengeance's flavor on my tongue. I took Winterfell with fish knights, tall heart stragglers, and even a pack of wolf pups Bran kept hidden in crypt tunnels." Here he gestured, and out of the gate limped Rickon Stark, rag-cloaked, great shaggy dog loping at heel. Rickon paused, wary until he recognized Robb. Then he broke into a run, throwing himself into his brother's arms. Near-wept cheers rippled through ranks as they reunited. Bran followed, borne on a wicker litter by Crannog men. His reed-slender frame had lengthened. Eyes silver-gray seemed older than his years, distant yet present. "The heart tree showed me you were coming," he said calmly to Catelyn as she pressed kisses to his brow. "It showed you walking through snows that burned." Catelyn stroked his cheek, both wonder and worry stirring. "The gods granted you sight I cannot fathom. The old gods have none of man's mercy," Bran answered softly, "but they gifted me hope." Inside the courtyard, rubble heaps lay beside new scaffolds. Free folk children scrubbed soot from stone faces of direwolves carved into buttresses. Manderley guards herded gaunt prisoners in Bolton colors toward stocks. The smell of beef stew simmered, first real stew within these walls since Theon's sack. Robb convened council in the great hall, now roofed with fresh timbers. The old, charred beams remained visible like fire scars of memory. North Lords present, Dustin, Ryswell, Serwyn renewed oaths. Ironborn deserters offered ships to patrol White Knife against any Frey incursion by water. Mance Rayder stood by hearth, arms crossed. "Your home mends," he observed. "Ours must be built. Let us discuss where." The council spilled into midnight, maps unrolled across trestles. Bran spoke up, voice calm. "North of Long Lake lies meadow enough to graze and soil to till where no lord claims dominion. Free folk may settle there under their own chiefs, paying tithes to Winterfell for protection." Lady Dustin sneered. "The Bar Rollins need seed and sheep." Robb's fist fell lightly on map. "We share both. The free folk will farm lands once Bolton's raids burned. The Umbers will trade timber. In 5 years none will lack bread." He glanced to Catelyn, who nodded, mother's instinct approving. By dawn, parchment treaties bore signatures. Rayder, Manderley, Dustin, Umber, Glover, Mormont, Reed. Sam dipped Maester's seal into crimson wax and pressed Direwolf over Weirwood rune over Night's Watch Corby mark, creating triple sigil unseen in annals. 2 months passed in feverish labor. Blacksmiths forged plowshares out of captured Bolton helms. Giants hauled riverstone to shore up the collapsed south curtain. Free folk cabins sprouted along the new Barrow Road, curling chimneys sending wood smoke across fields where winter rye took cautious root. Bran spent hours among masons, guiding restoration of Crypt Stair and Godswood Pool. He spoke less each week, eyes clouded with green dreams. Yet his laughter when Rickon tackled him from behind warmed every worker near. On the 62nd day of spring thaw, a raven arrived from White Harbor bearing a scroll penned in delicate Braavosi script. Lord Wyman broke the seal before Robb, Catelyn, Jon, and assembled captains. From the hand of Ser Davos Seaworth, envoy of Queen Daenerys Targaryen, Wyman announced. Murmurs surged. Robb motioned for quiet. Wyman read, "To Robb Stark, King in the North, defender of the ruined wall, breaker of winter, Her Grace Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Undulls, Rhoynar, and First Men, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, breaker of chains, mother of dragons, sends greeting and respect. Word of your victory over the others flies on every wind. Such deeds warrant both gratitude and caution, for the realm bleeds still from other wounds. Her Grace proposes parley at the Trident's green fork on the first full moon of summer, that dragons and direwolves may speak without swords betwixt them. I, Davos of House Seaworth, will stand as her voice until such a meeting." Robb read again, weighing each phrase. "Dragons and direwolves," he murmured, "and lions still crouch between." Jon's face revealed little, but his eyes reflected hearthlight like coals. "You should meet her, and if she demands fealty, then offer alliance." Jon turned to Catelyn. "Our father died to honor his king once. You won a war by not bending to one after. Perhaps now we forge something new. Equals joined by deed, not birth." Catelyn placed a hand upon Robb's sleeve. "Meet her, hear her. A world welded of north and dragonfire may yet heal." Robb exhaled. "So we ride again." The host that set out for the Trident felt smaller, though numbers matched the march north. Weight of risk grows heavier when hope is born. Robb brought stalwarts. Jon, Catelyn, Mance, Meege, Edmure, Wyman. Bran remained, reluctant but resigned, guiding Winterfell with counsel of Maester Willis and Lady Talisa. South through the neck they rode, banners half-furled to ease passage. At the crossroads, travelers gathered like river eddies. Small folk fleeing Frey-held hamlets, knights seeking a cause richer than coin, merchant caravans uncertain which sigil to pledge. Each waved or bowed, some knelt. Songs of the Winterbreak King had spread, simple tunes about wolves ending night. Minstrels followed the host, plucking lutes for crusts. Near Maidenpool, they met 3 Tyrell envoys under white gold banners. Ser Garland offered bread and salt, cited Queen Marjorie's desire for peace with a realm anesthetized by war. "Lannister coffers run dry," he confided. "My father thinks grain is worth more than gold." Robb accepted the bread, but not yet the alliance. "One queen at a time," he said. On the eve of full moon, they reached the Green Fork's wide meadow. The river glimmered under starlight. Reeds whispered secrets of dead young kings. Davos awaited beside a pavilion of cream silk. Torches lit his weathered face. When he bowed, missing fingers glinted silver. "My king," Davos greeted, treating Robb's style with sincere gravity. He turned to Catelyn, Jon, the others. "I am bid to treat you with honor. Her Grace will join at dawn, upon Dragonback." At that word, horses shied. Even giants shifted uneasily. But Robb answered calm. "We have fought winter itself. We will not tremble at wings." Davos smiled ruefully. "I've learned the bravest men still flinch when Drogon roars." They shared supper in neutral tents, river fish stew, crusts of bread, Dornish red poured sparingly from Tyroshi glass. Mance traded songs with Davos of storms and sails. Meege and Edmure argued over bear pit wagering customs. Catelyn listened, marking how the wind carried scents of lilac and cedar now, faint but real, spring's first breath far from Winterfell hearths. Dawn painted bruised violet over the river. Silence weighed heavy until distant thunder rolled from the east. A black moat appeared above hills, swelling to shape of vast wings. Drogon descended like falling night, red fire streaking nostrils. Fields rippled with heat as claws tore turf. Upon his neck, silver-haired Daenerys sat straight, dawnfire dancing on armor scaled like pale jade. Two smaller dragons circled overhead, green and gold. Robb stepped out alone. Wind of wings whipped cloak behind him. Drogon's head lowered, pupils slit flame-red. Robb met that gaze. Gray wind beside him growled low but did not retreat. After heartbeats that felt like hammer strokes, the dragon snorted flames skyward. Greeting, challenge, or indifference, none could say. Daenerys slid down, boots sinking into mud. She walked to Robb till 3 paces remained. Sun broke the horizon, gilding them both in fierce light. "I have heard you named Winter's Bane," she said, voice soft but carrying. "Is it tea?"
Oui.
"We stood at a frozen lake and slew a heart of ice," Robb answered. "But bands break only to bend again. We'll need more than songs to keep darkness buried." Dany's eyes shifted to Jon, who had stepped forward. Recognition or prophecy's echo flickered there. "And you," she whispered, "last time I crossed the shadow of a house Stark, my dragons were newborn. They have grown." She looked back to Robb. "I know the cost of war. Children burned in pits, mothers chained. I seek a realm cured of such sickness. Will you help me wield fire that cuts and cauterizes both?" Robb considered. Fire and ice forged one blade of legend. We could forge a realm the same. He knelt, but not wholly. One knee touched earth, sword unbelted and laid flat between them. No hilt offered, no surrender implied. "I, Robb of House Stark, pledge friendship and shield to Daenerys, if she stands as friend and shield to the north and honors its ancient laws." Daenerys placed her palm upon the blade's flat. "I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, accept friendship and shield. The north shall rule itself beneath my wings, not under them." Catelyn released a breath she did not know she held. Around them, men and women of 50 banners exhaled likewise. Drogon folded wings, snorted, as if pleased. Jon approached, Longclaw at side. "Then let us speak of the south," he said. "King's Landing festers. Sparrows cry for justice. Lions hoard bread. Tyrells count grain. If wolves and dragons march together, perhaps no battle need be joined." Dany's smile was strange. Tired, hopeful, wary. "Perhaps," she echoed. "But I have learned men who taste power seldom release it sweetly. Cersei may lock every gate, fill streets with wildfire." She glanced skyward where Regal and Viserion circled. "Flame alone might cleanse that rot, yet I would spare innocence." Robb nodded. "We breached the Winter's Gate with obsidian and courage, not torch of cities. We can breach Cersei's holdfast the same." He looked to Catelyn. "Mother, you knew the Red keeps secrets while Father served. Speak." Memories of stone stairwells and whispering galleries flooded her. "There are caverns beneath the city," she said slowly. "Tunnels Maegor wove like spider threads. Some exit to Blackwater Rush, others under Sep's long collapsed. A small force could slip inside, open gates before siege engines fire." Davos rubbed beard. "Sewer outlets, smugglers' veins. I know them." Dany raised brow. "Storm's End's Onion Knight plans to smuggle wolves into the lion's den?" "With respect, Your Grace," Davos said. "I've smuggled less likely cargo." Laughter rose, easing tension. The council set to logistics. Mance would take free folk scouts down riverways to scout tunnels. Meej would lead a bear-clad vanguard to cut Kings Road bridges behind Lannister reinforcements. Edmure pledged riverboats. Wyman promised a fleet of Manderly cogs bearing grain for starving smallfolk. "Win their bellies and you win their hearts," he boomed. By dusk, alliance terms inked upon lambskin were sealed under 3 sigils. Direwolf, 3-headed dragon, Weirwood branch. Ravens flew to every holdfast north of the Mander and south of Sunspear. That night, feasts erupted on both riverbanks. Giants roasted whole oxen spitted on green were logs. Dragons swooped overhead, sending sparks swirling like fallen stars. Catelyn sat beside Daenerys, nursing warmed wine. The queen studied her hands, palms rougher than myths claimed. "My father slew your northern kin," Dany said quietly. "My brother threatened your queen with swords, yet you clasped my hand. Why?" Catelyn considered the glow of fire in silver hair. "Because the dead do not care who wronged whom. They will come again when memories fade. We must weave new cloth from old banners, else each house stands naked tonight." She looked to Jon dancing reluctantly with a spear wife while Robb cheered. "My sons lived where Ned died. I will give them a realm where swords teach only defense." Dany lifted her goblet. "Then let queens share that vow." They drank. News of Dragonwolf Pact spread like wildfire not yet sparked. In King's Landing, Cersei flung goblets at map boards. Highgarden envoys deserted the Red Keep under cover of night. The sparrows flooded streets chanting, "The night is broken. Break the Iron Throne." Lannister gold cloaks demanded double pay. Coffers echoed hollow. By the time Tarly banners reached the city with a token host, half the gates had rebelled. Yet Cersei still had wildfire sinks beneath September of Baelor, archers on every wall, and pyromancers eager for coin. When she learned of tunnels under the keep, she flooded lower vaults, sealing iron grates with molten lead. The city became tinder, queen its spark. Robb's host encamped at Stony September come midsummer, awaiting grain barges. Daenerys trained legions of unsullied drilling beside bare-cloaked Northmen, their steps striking curious harmony. Free folk built wattle huts rather than tents. Dragons hunted boar in the Kingswood, returning to spit charred carcasses before the soup lines. Councils met nightly under open sky, plans for infiltration twisted like ivy. Davos guiding Jon and 100 silent wolves through sewer grates. Tyrion Lannister escaped west disguised as minstrel, riding under flag of truce to assemble allies within the city. Bran sending ravens with visions of wildfire caches to Maze Masters under the city. But as full harvest moon rose bronze over camp, Bran arrived in a carriage drawn by shaggy goats, Reed guard at side. He entered Robb's command tent unasked, eyes clouded, voice distant. "The throne must be melted," Bran said simply. Robb stiffened. "Explain." "The chair of swords was forged in dragon's fire to bind lords," Bran murmured, gaze fixed on candle flame tremoring. "Blood clings to every blade, souls of kings screaming for more iron. If we leave it, lions will sit again, or wolves or dragons. War will circle back, melt the swords, forge plowshares, bridges. A ring of seats, not one." Daenerys listened by the entrance, wind rustling tent canvas. "My birthright," she said, but no anger warmed her words, only weariness. "A chair of melted spears." Bran looked at her at last. The breaker of chains knows shackles may hide in crown shape. The tent held breath. At length Dany nodded. "We will break that chain too," Robb exhaled. "Then plan for King's Landing changes. We take the city but spare folk from flame. Dragons hold the walls while wolves and onions slip through tunnels. Once gates open, unsullied secure the pyromancers. Then Drogon melts the throne in sight of all, and the realm sees a queen unshackled from steel." Jon placed fist on table. "I will lead the sewer band." Catelyn's heart lurched. "Jon." He turned, eyes soft but firm. "If shadows wait there, I owe ghosts their peace." Catelyn took his hand. "Then go with every blessing I denied you as child. But come back to me, as son and brother both." He embraced her, and she felt Ned's warmth once more. The assault began on first frost of autumn. Fog swaddled the Blackwater, masking low-draft barges crewed by iron-born deserters under Davos. They slipped beneath Lion Gate culverts where grates had been rotted by secret applications of bear grease and lye poured weeks before by crannig divers. Jon led 50 rangers, steel wrapped in black cloth. Gray wind and ghosts swam the delta alongside like pale memories of dire myths. Above, dragons screamed, passing over the city in slow arcs to herd attention skyward. Cersei's scorpions fired, bolts trailing flame. Drogon caught one, breast scale cracked but hide unpierced. He answered with a blast that slagged turret stone. Yet he did not unleash full fury, only the threat of it. Inside dank passages, Jon mapped each footstep by smell. Rot, mildew, rushwater. They climbed ladder shafts into dungeons flooded knee-deep. Pyromancers in green robes scurried with torches. One turned. Ghost tore throat before cry escaped. They found vault doors sealed. But Sam's sketches from captured alchemist logs revealed hidden vents for wildfire fumes. Jon fed those vents sacks of saltpeter and sand, then lit slow-fused twine. Within minutes, muffled thumps signaled collapse. Flames leapt but died early, starved by sand. The greatest stockpile of wildfire drowned. Upon the walls, unsullied spear cohorts marched through Dragon Gate flung open by Mance Raiders freefolk who climbed embrasures with rope ladders. Lannister archers, starved and unpaid, threw bows down. In Flea Bottom, small folk banged pots shouting, "Bread Wolf! Fire Queen!" as Manderley carts rolled in handing out loaves stamped with Dragon Direwolf sigil. Cersei retreat to the Red Keep's tower. There she watched Greyjoy sails blocking Blackwater Bay, Northman wolves storming Mudgate, dragons etching fiery runes in dawn. She sent ravens begging Euron, but the Kraken was weeks sailing distant, chased by Tyrell Drommons. When Jon Snow's strike squad emerged in Maegor's Holdfast and threw open King's Gate from within, gold cloaks deserted wholesale. Robb Stark strode into the throne room first, Ironbreaker reflecting shattered stained glass. Behind him walked Daenerys, flanked by Missandei and Tyrion reclaimed from gutter prison. The Iron Throne loomed, jagged, forbidding. Cersei sat upon it, pale in crimson gown, crown askew. She held a dagger to Tommen's throat, boy whimpering. "Another step and the king dies," she hissed. Daenerys' voice cut like soft steel. "No child needs a crown welded to skin. Release him." Cersei laughed, brittle. "You'll burn the throne? Then burn us together. Dragonfire makes quick work." "No," Robb said, taking a single pace. "Winter taught me to wield colder blades." He signaled. Ghost slunk from shadow behind dais, crimson eyes glowing. Cersei startled. Tommen pulled away, slicing his cheek but escaping. Grey wind bounded, shielding boy. Tyrion hurried to seize brother's child. Cersei shrieked, dagger raised, but Jon stepped from side and caught her wrist. Her eyes widened, seeing Ned Stark's ghost perhaps. Then steel clattered. Guards dragged her away. She spat curses until silenced with cloth. Daenerys ascended steps to throne. She touched one twisted sword, finger-tracing ridge where some long-dead lord's blade melted among others. Then she turned to Drogon waiting beyond shattered doors. "Dracarys," she whispered. Fire engulfed the throne, white gold at first, then molten red. Iron puddled, ran between stones, hissed into cracks. The roar filled hall, drowning centuries of screams forged into the seat. When flame died, only a lake of cooling iron remained. Daenerys faced crowd of soldiers, small folk, lords craning from broken galleries. "No single blade rules you now," she said. "Your rulers stand together or not at all." Robb raised Ironbreaker point down like plowshare. "The North will sit at council with South, East, and Dorne on equal dais. Justice forged in many hammers." Cheers erupted, unequal but growing. Among them, Catelyn wept softly, fearful tears washing away beneath awe. Years later, bards would sing of the Council of the Broken Throne convened in the Dragon Pit where benches rimmed a great circle. Stark, Targaryen, Tyrell, Martell, Baratheon, Tully, Arryn, Greyjoy, and a seat for free folk carved from heart-tree wood. No king or queen sat central. Rather, a seed stone marked memory of swords melted. Laws born there granted small folk voice through elected wardens, freed crownlands from royal tithe, bound knights watch to the realm rather than oathless isolation. Dragons guarded skies, direwolves watched forests, and on frosted nights north of Winterfell free folk children sang the same rhymes Stark babes whispered by hearths. In Winterfell's Godswood, old snow still fell each winter, soft and unthreatening. Bran sat beneath heart-tree limbs, ravens whispering news across continents. Rickon taught giants to plant apple orchards. Talisa tended Healer's School, where maesters of South learned poultice from spearwives of Northern Frost. Catelyn, gray-streaked now, walked ramparts in dawn's quiet. Far south, she knew, Daenerys and Robb visited towns ravaged by wars past, opening granaries and building bridges from melted swords reforged. But her steps remained within these stones, for she had mended them once with grief and fire. She paused, hearing footfalls. Jon approached, cloak fur-trimmed white. "Raven says dragons birthed 3 new hatchlings at Dragonstone," he said. "The realm grows stranger yet kinder." "Strangeness feeds wonder," she replied, "as long as we tend it." On horizon, sunrise painted the wall, no longer manned by exiles but by rangers from every kingdom who served seasons, not crowns. Catelyn felt warmth despite cold. She thought of that night in a hall of treachery where crossbows cocked, and her plea to breathe night air saved a world she could not yet see. One mother's instinct, one uncle's caution, and winter failed. She turned to Jon. "We must visit the lake again someday. Place a stone for every soul lost." Jon's eyes, still haunted sometimes but clearer, met hers. "Aye, and for every soul found." They walked the wall top together, direwolves trotting behind. Above, the last snows of fading winter caught sunlight, turning to glitter that drifted like blessings upon a land reborn. Neither ice nor fire, but the shimmering promise born when opposites chose, at last, to stand side by side.